Yeah, so 1365 has 2.5 trillion KP, and this camp up here, this purple camp in Picardy, they've got 2.4 trillion KP, right? So they have the same amount of KP. This triple camp has more power. They have more power than 1365. Now, I'm not familiar with 1473. I'm not familiar with RSR. We did ally with SN94 in our last KvK, and they were quite good. SN41 was quite good, right? And to me, this camp is better than 1365. They've got more power, they've got the same amount of KP, and they have more leaders. They have leaders across 3 kingdoms against a leadership group from 1 kingdom. And to me, that's what makes a big difference. That makes a very big difference. And at the same time, down here in the lower right, you've got 1960 and 2377. 1960 has a bit more KP, a lot less power. Now, I didn't notice this before. I did not notice until just now, but actually the domain is different because the domain power is the key. The domain power has all the farms in it, right? Once you look at the domain power, you know how much power the farms have. So 1960 has nearly as much power as 2377, and they've got a lot more KP, a lot more KP. And we saw what happened. Don't walk away, Nevsky. Don't walk away from me. We saw what happened in the last war when 960 and 2489 met in a zone, one-on-one, and 1960 had the numbers advantage, right? They had more active players than 2489. We saw exactly what happened, which is a very boring fight, quite frankly. A very boring fight, where they went back and forth in the open field. 2489 was never able to muster an offense because they never had the numbers. They never had the numbers. Now, I'm not saying we're going to have a boring fight again, because I do think 2377... I mean, they've done some... I mean, listen, I don't know their leadership too well, but, like, I've seen them fight in a few KvKs. They do some dynamic stuff. They have some good movement. They make good decisions. I think Shark is probably, like, a very good leader, quite frankly. I've seen him do some cool stuff in Osiris League as well. I do think that 2377 is going to try to outplay 1960 in a way that 2489 didn't really try to do. But it's very hard for me to see 2377 locking in 960. And once you're unable to lock in 960, once 960 sort of wins that fight, the top side does have a real advantage, I think. I think they really do have a real advantage, and the dustiness of 1365, as Gosu was willing to say, and that really I don't think any other content creator was willing to say, the dustiness of 365 is a huge factor in this war. Now listen, I hope they prove me wrong and it's an incredibly good fight, but that remains to be seen. And I think, I think 1606 is probably at their peak. I think 1606 is probably as strong as they've ever been. But 2975, I don't know. I mean, they do have a lot of KP. Maybe they're at their peak. Maybe they are. I don't know. We fought against 2975 before. I thought they were good, not great. We beat them quite handily in a zone. We beat them in one day in a zone. But they were good, and they obviously outplayed 2268 in a zone in that same KvK. So I think that camp is really good. I think the 1606 2975 camp is really, really good because they cover each other's downtime. 1606 is more of an EU American KD. 2975 is Asian. So I think they cover each other's downtime well. They have 2 strong leadership groups. I think that camp's going to be very good. And it's nice that that camp has the ability to go in both directions. But I do think topside has a pretty big advantage in that war. The domain power is really interesting. This is probably the best graphic I've seen for this KvK, actually. This is probably the best graphic. I don't know if these numbers are accurate, but let's assume they are. Let's just assume. It's more fun to assume these numbers are correct. Look at the domain power of this purple camp. 60.3 billion power in this purple camp against 41.3 in 1365. This camp is definitely stronger than 1365. Like, there's no way that this purple camp is not stronger than the red camp. They have them beat in every metric except kill points and except number of whales. And whales are important. They are definitely important. But I think this is a pretty legit camp. Okay, I just think they're pretty legit. But it'll still, I mean, it's going to be a great war. You know what I mean? It is going to be a great war. And Orleans is a great map for it because things can happen on that Orleans map for sure. You know, very, like, the building is very important on the Orleans map. Now, let's think about this. You know, I just thought of this right now, right? Because we played Orleans. We played Orleans like a year ago, right? The thing about Orleans and those Zone 5s, because there will be important Zone 5s in that Orleans, right? The Zone 5 fights are important in terms of securing access, additional access to Zone 6, right? The thing about it is, when we fought in Champagne, we put up like a giant fort wall. Like, because we were outnumbered against the enemy. The enemy was extremely strong. They were stronger than us. This is actually where I met Uni. Uni was in our camp. And we had like a very epic war here. But what Adinavo, our former leader, did is he built like a giant fort wall over here. Like in this area here. And years ago, I think it was Nevers, right? Was it Nevers? Yeah, I think it was Nevers. Remember, this is where Song... Remember way back in the day, in the the original Orleans, when Song did a fort wall over here to like block out 1846? Song did this little fort wall in this corner here, and they secured this pass into Zone 6, right? This is the zone that 2377 and 1960 are going to fight in. They're going to fight in this zone. And let's assume for one moment that 960 is the favorite to win that zone, which I think is a reasonable assumption. If 1960 is the favorite, then 1960 will likely secure this pass. But the main objective in the zone is going to be this pass right here. This pass right here, right? If 2377 assumes that they are the underdog, and they assume that their middle camp is stronger than the enemy's middle camp, and that they actually have a better chance in Ile-de-France against 1960 than they do in Nevers, then 2377 can do some stuff here. They can do some stuff with build planning and forts that could be interesting. It could be interesting. Now, they might just fight them straight up. They might be like, we're just going to go all out in this zone and fight them in Nevers and try to win Nevers. They'll probably do that. But let's keep in mind that this is not a normal bullshit zone. This is not a bullshit zone like in King of All Britain Zone 5, where you fight for it, but it doesn't matter. It's all you're fighting for is the holy site, and that zone is disconnected from all the other zones, right? This is very different. Nevers is very, very different. Nevers is about the pass. It's not about the holy site. It's not about winning the zone. It's about this pass. You got to have this pass so you can get more stuff quickly built in Ile-de-France. So this zone can play differently. And 1365 can probably do the same thing in Maine against 1093. They can probably do something similar in this zone as well to try to defend this pass, right? And I think it makes a bit of sense. I think it does make a bit of sense. But what makes it more complicated is that for the bottom side, for the 2377, 1606, 1365 side, there's a bit of a question of like which zone 6 should they try to win more? Like, should they try to keep 1093 out of Kingsland, or should they try to keep 960 out of Kingsland? That's a very tough decision. I do think if LaMarche really focuses on terrain, that they might be able to win terrain. But I think if 2377 doesn't get devastated here in Nevers, they hold this pass, and then LaMarche goes all in on Ile-de-France. I mean, that's kind of the fight I want to see, right? I want to see 960 get really, really tested, working with 3A Kingdom allies. But Nevers is going to be very interesting in terms of how these two camps play it.